but she has been doing this work, a class divided. You remember the brown-eyed, blue-eyed exercise. Let me get that correct. That so told us about how we see each other. It's amazing the work that she's been doing in this country. Let me welcome to the show activist Jane Elliott.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. However, I have to disagree with you on something already.
Please.
We need the media. We need the media to hear at least some of the truth.
Okay.
And we need to remember that we wouldn't have Donald Trump as president if they had told the truth. Are you still with me?
Yeah, no, I am. We wouldn't have Donald Trump if they had told the truth, but they didn't, and that's my point. Tell the truth.
Yeah.
If you're going to have
they wouldn't tell the truth about him. They presented him as a joke. He's not a joke. He's a boy grown tall. He's an adolescent trying to do a man's job, and he can't do it. And he appeals to other boys grown tall who haven't left their adolescence. The man is susceptible to flattery, and everybody knows it. And the people who are encouraging him to say the things he says and do the things he does know that he's susceptible to flattery, and as long as they pretend to love him, he will follow them right down the rabbit hole, and that's what's happening right now. This thing in Charlottesville is totally, absolutely unacceptable, and he should have said, this is absolutely unacceptable. We are sending in the National Guard. Can you imagine what would have happened if a bunch of young black males had come into town with guns on their shoulders and on their hips and wearing helmets, had come to march in Charlottesville? Can you imagine what would have happened?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
It would have looked like
country,
Ferguson.
Unfortunately,
right.
we have a whole lot of people who are saying we are in a post-racial society now. We are not in a post-racial society, and everybody needs to know that, and they need to remember that. We are, because of 8 years of a black man in the White House, those people who were angry when he got elected are going to get even now. And the major fear of white people in this country today is their knowledge of the demographics that say within 30 years, white people will be a numerical minority in the United States of America. And many white people are scared to death about what's going to happen to them when that happens. And it will happen. So this isn't just about Charlottesville, and it isn't just about Donosaurus T. Rump. It's about white fear that we will be treated as white people when we're in the minority, the way we have treated other minorities over 300 years.
866-801-8255. She said T-Rump. We're talking with Jane Elliott. She is an activist. She's the creator of the brown-eyed, blue-eyed exercise that she did with her Lily White class in Iowa, Lily White, Iowa, and it was profound. You can go on YouTube and several other places to see it. And she's done it several times throughout the years, and it's all come back with the same result. What is the great fear that white people have? Because I'm baffled by it. If Charleston, South Carolina is any indication, when a domestic violent terrorist can go into a church and gun down 9 people, and those family members of those 9 people forgave him. What is the fear that white people have that if they're a numerical minority, that black and brown folk from the global majority, what's the fear that's going to happen?
They're afraid that they're going to be treated the way they have treated others.
But there's no history for that. Every time when it plays out, the opposite happens.
You don't think we white folks pay any attention to real history, do you?
Okay, you just stumped me.
We don't look at real history. We look at the history that we were taught in school, which is mostly a flat-out lie. Columbus didn't discover America. There were blacks here before Columbus got here. So we celebrate Columbus Day as if that really happened. It didn't really happen. You can't discover a place where people are already living. But in order to make this a white man's land, then you have to make white men the heroes, and that's what we do with our history. We do not study history. We study history. What we call education in this country is actually indoctrination. It takes us 13 years to thoroughly indoctrinate a person to the myth of white superiority and to the myth of race. We have all been indoctrinated with the idea that there are 4 or 5 different races. There's only one. There's only one race, the human race. And when I go on a college campus, I say to the 200 to 600 or 700 students, will every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the white race, please stand. Most white kids all bounce up and they just grin all over. I say, now, will every person who considers himself or herself a member of the black race, please stand. Brown race, yellow race, red race, and there's no such thing as red race. That is a name we gave to Native Americans because we didn't understand why that they painted their faces red. It's so long and a disgusting story. After I get them all standing, I say, now, you're all members of those different races, right? Yeah. Okay, now, will every person in this room who considers himself or herself a member of the human race please sit down? There's an audible gasp. And they all sit down, and they look at each other like, oh, man, she got us. And I did. I got them. There's only one race on the face of the earth. We are all descendants of black women who evolved in sub-Saharan Africa to about 280,000 years ago. We are all, and you can call it colonial, I don't care what you call it. Those black people were adventuresome, they were intelligent, they managed to cross the ocean to this continent and to every other continent over the 280,000 years. Every person on the face of the earth is a cousin to every other person on the face of the earth. The Bible talks about the family of man. It doesn't talk about the family of white men. It talks about the family of man because we're all members of the same human family. What we're dealing with is ignorance. Ignorance perpetuated by an educational system, which is not an educational system. It is a system for indoctrinating children to be good Americans. And to be good Americans, you have to believe in the myth of race. Anybody who's over the age of 18 and hasn't read the book, The Myth of Race, by Robert Wald Sussman, has done themselves a very big disfavor. Because if you read that book, you can no longer support the idea that there are 4 or 5 different races. There's only one. You and I, whatever your color, are from 30th to 50th cousins. That's the way it is. And I get really angry about people who abuse my cousins because of the abuser's ignorance about skin color. There are people, many people in this country, who really believe that skin color is a determinant, an indicator of your intelligence or your worth as a human being. They're absolutely flat out wrong. They've been miseducated. And that's what's going on in Charlottesville right now.
My cousin Jane Elliott, is phenomenal. And I'm always, last time you were here, you were explaining how the brown-eyed, blue-eyed exercise, how it was born and your background. I'm still floored, though, Jane Elliott, by how this woman, born in 1933 in this nation, right, with the history in this. I mean, you were born before Hitler, before the rise of the Third Reich really took hold. You were born during a time when, blacks were second-class citizens in Iowa, where there were very few black people. How did you come to this place of reckoning with yourself? How did you come to this understanding and then take it into activism?
I grew up. A whole lot of people grow older. A few grow up. Those who grow up give up the childish indoctrination and look up and out and realize that they've been grossly lied to. My father used to say, well, I was born the year Adolf Hitler and Franklin Roosevelt came to power. Now, I don't think men make the times. I think times make the men. I think that the reason I do what I do is because I was born the same year those two men came to power. And I have watched things happen that I'm watching again today. The same kinds of things that happened during the Nazi years are exactly what are the things that are happening today. People like Bannon and Breitbart, and Gork, whatever his name is,
Gorsuch,
are using
Gorka,
yeah, that man. They are using Donald Trump to accomplish what they couldn't accomplish until they got the presidency. And they had to get a president that wasn't real bright and that was susceptible to flattery, and that was adolescent, that he has never been in his adult ego state. I'm not sure he has one. He spends all his time in either his child ego state pouting or in his parent ego state bullying. And they recognize that, and they are using him to, as Bannon said in an interview, we need to deconstruct this government. That is exactly what they have in mind. And people who are going to pretend that Charlottesville is just once need to realize that these folks are organizing rallies to to happen all over the United States, just like the one in Charlottesville. They are attempting to divide and conquer this nation. These alt-right people are all wrong. And we need to realize that, and we need to wake up and say it's not going to happen in our community.
866-801-8255. For the folk listening who are our cousins, but who may lack melanin, and we want to send them a message because I tweeted out, silence is acquiescence. It's not a new thought. When you're silent, you're agreeing to what's happening. How do we get them motivated to get up off their couches and get up out of their way and to grow up the way you have, Jane Elliott, and be involved in the future of this country in a positive way? How do we get them involved?
If you say to them, and I have done this on college campuses, and if you go on, anyway, T.I. has this on one of his last records on his tapes.
Wait, did Jane Elliott just reference T.I.? Okay, this is clearly the end times. We are living in the last days. Yep. Go ahead.
T.I. is one of my friends. I enjoy T.I. But his manager called me one day and asked me if they could use something that I had done at a college on his last tape, whatever it was. And I said, yeah, as long as it's, hey, if you don't treat it badly, go ahead. I asked a group of college people on camera, because we were doing a film. I said, now, will every white person in this room who would like to be treated the way we have treated people of color, particularly blacks, in this country for the last 200 years, if you would like to be treated that way for the rest of your life, please stand. Nobody stood. You could have heard a feather fall. I said, no, but you must not have understood the instructions. I said, if you're white and you want to be treated the way we treat our black citizens, please stand. Nobody stood. I said, you know what you just admitted? You admitted that you know it's happening, you know it's wrong, and you know you don't want it to happen to you. So why? Why are you allowing it to happen to other people and denying that it's happening? I think white people, the vast majority of white people, in fact, and they didn't vote for Donald Trump. He lost by 3 million votes. But the vast majority of white people in this country do not want to perpetuate this ignorance. They don't want to perpetuate this bigotry. They don't want to perpetuate this racism. They know better, but they don't know why. Nobody has told them, look, we're all members of the same race. There's only one race. We've got to stop talking about race and start talking about what the problem is, which is ignorance. People will say to me, well, that person doesn't like me because of my skin color. And I say, no. It isn't your skin color. That's the problem. That person doesn't like you because that person is ignorant about what causes skin color, where it came from, and what it's good for. And as this climate change happens and we are exposed to more and more sunlight on this earth, white folks are going to wish more and more that they had more and more melanin, because melanin is a chemical in your skin that protects your cells from the damaging rays of the sun. Blacks were here first, and blacks are going to be here last.
On that note,
we need to know that, and we need to realize that, and we need to accept that, and we need to say, that's where the strength is. That's where the power needs to be. We need to get together and make this a happy family. Now, I have cousins that I don't like, but I don't allow them to abuse my other cousins.
Amen. Jane Elliott, thank you so much. My cousin Jane Elliott is the bomb, y'all. She is all of that in a bag of chips. And I'm so grateful that you were born, and I'm grateful that you're still out there doing the work that you're doing. And we appreciate you being a part of our family.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being a part of your family.
Jane Elliott. Y'all follow her everywhere. We're going to tweet out all of her information, as well as where you can get her brown-eyed, blue-eyed exercise. And I'm going to pivot. I'm going to do a hard pivot. We're going to just keep going here because, listen, this is about dialogue, but it's also about understanding. And as Jane Elliott so eloquently pointed out, our largest issue in this country is ignorance. So I'm here to eradicate ignorance, one person at a time, one show at a time.